Abbie Eaton, welcome to Housing Technology 2026. Thank you so much for launching our Women in Housing Technology event. How was it?
It was fantastic, and yeah, thank you for asking me to be here. It was really impressive to see just how many women turned up and listened to me talk about my motorsport career, and also listened to the three panellists as well.
You're a racing driver, Abbie. What do you think that's got to do with housing?
So I think there's quite a lot of parallels between being a female racing driver in a male-dominated sport as to the kind of female presence in the housing tech industry as well. And you know, for me, I started when I was 10 years old, which was 24 years ago now. And you know, if I compare really 24 years ago to now, there are a lot more females. They are getting higher up the ranks as well, but that's not without its challenges along the way. And you know, there's quite a lot of synergy between some of the challenges and battles that women in the housing tech sector have to deal with, just the same as myself.
How has data worked in your environment, and how does that correlate? How does that move forward?
For me, data is kind of integrated into every part of my job role now. Yes, I'm a racing driver, but I'm also a driver coach, so I help to coach people to improve and get faster on the track. And data is used via, we have data loggers in the car. We can basically see any input that the driver puts into the car, and also any input from the car, perhaps where they ride over a curb, or you know, the G-forces in the car. And you can't argue with the data that you see in front of you. There are certain times whereby a driver might say there's something not quite right, and you know, potentially you're in a new team. As a female coming into a new team, you kind of have to earn your stripes a little bit. And if you can use the data to back up your kind of feel in the car, you can't argue with that. So, you know, it's data-driven results. You know, it helps shape the driver that I am and the driver that I'm helping to coach. More of it, really. I think welcome the data and the technology even more so.
Can you give me a specific example of how you use the data?
One example that kind of will always stick with me through my career is when I raced V8 supercars in Australia, and there was just something not right with the car. You know, you'd hit a curb and basically the steering would just lock out. And that's really disconcerting when you're trying to avoid the walls and you're traveling at 130 miles an hour. I kept banging on about it to this engineer who obviously we'd only just met, you know, on the morning of that day. You know, he said, oh, you just be getting used to the car, you know, just keep at it, you know, it'll make sense soon. In the end, I said, look, humour me, bring up the data and show me the damper traces for the front right. And he's looking through, I won't find anything. And then clicked on damper number 4, and lo and behold, there was something wrong with the damper, and the damper needed changing. Without the data there, I wouldn't have had that tool in my armour to be able to, you know, prove myself. So things like that happen quite often. The more you're with the team, obviously the more you'll say something and the team will respect and go and check it straight away. But certainly when you go into a new team, that's the challenges that you sometimes face.
I'm just fascinated to know, these data loggers, do they generate lots of data points?
So I'm mad on data. I love it. I can't get enough data. So there's probably more data generated really than what a driver really needs to kind of hone. And that's where an engineer will be really in depth into, you know, looking at the engine revs, looking at how the car's idling, looking at, you know, the electric levels on the batteries and the voltage and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it'll give hundreds and hundreds of data points, and it's, you know, it's great to understand every single one of them, but actually there are some that, you know, you can relax on and you focus on the ones that are more relevant to what you're trying to draw out of the car or what you're trying to draw out of your driver.
What you've done, you obviously assimilate that information for you specifically. So there's a human element involved in this, but
Yeah.
There's also surfacing that data so that you can use it wisely.
For sure, and you know, there'll be situations where, let's say the data or AI now will say, you can take this corner full power. You know, there's no reason for you to lift off the accelerator here. That is able to go round that corner and hold onto the road. But what it doesn't take into account potentially that the previous session, there might have been a crash there and there's some oil that's been put down or there's cement dust down. You know, you still need that human element to, you know, bring in things into it, such as fear factor. At the end of the day, yes, it's okay for an engineer to say, you need to brake later here, but that doesn't take into account that, yes, you might be able to brake later, but if you get it wrong, there's a wall there to greet you at the other side. So I think data is a really useful tool for, you know, diagnostics and shaping where it is you need to end up and where the end goal is, but it's not to be used as a kind of substitute. It's an aid and it's an assist. And when we start relying on tech solely, that's when things can go wrong, and it's a bit scary to do that. And ultimately there needs to be a little bit of a kind of, down the middle, use it as a tool, use it as an aid, but still, you know, we've got fantastic brains, so we need to make the most of those and use those to help as well.
It just remains for me to say thank you very much for your time and really appreciate it. Have you actually enjoyed being here?
Yeah, I've loved it, and you know what, it's been really interesting to see a different industry and the challenges within that. You kind of take for granted that, you know, it's obvious the kind of industry I'm in, that the challenges I'm going to face, but actually to see a lot of parallels through the housing tech sector as well, it's been really enlightening, and everyone's been lovely, everyone's been really welcoming, so I'll see you in 2027 perhaps.
Abbie Eaton, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.